So just been handed out is a double-sided sheet of paper which has details of our guest speaker next week, Tony Snatcher. You can see he's sitting in the biography there that he's very senior advisor to the current government about water resources. And he's managed to come every year to this class, but in some cases the minister has, on the morning he's going to come saying that we've got to come to my office instead of going to SRES, which I understand does that. But there's probably an 80% chance he's going to be here next week, and he'll be certainly here one week. So before you come to the class next week, just to read his bio, underneath that is some details from Tom yesterday about the Murray-Darling Agreement. And as you can see in the box at the top, we just want you to run a hypothetical when he comes. That you're the new minister, you don't know much about water, and you're going to be asking him questions and trying to find out what kind of things you want to do on. So a very valuable exercise, particularly for those who will be doing the tutorial on Murray-Darling. So as I said, for the rest of the day, I'll talk about policy lessons from Landcare, and also after the break we'll have that first very brief, less than a minute report back from everyone who's facilitated one of the first two tutorials. I said when I did the slides last night that Peter might come in for the end of this lecture, but he's going to save that to next week. So just be on Landcare for the rest of the day. Just if anyone hasn't got any emails from me, it means that I don't have your email address, or you're not checking your email. So if you're not getting any emails from me, come and see me during the break, or send me an email and I'll add you to the list. So I've been sending out occasional emails to people. People have been asking about the tube papers and when they're due. So the question for the first one is, what are the keys to effective public participation in the environmental context? And it's due next week. If you go to the web page, so hopefully you're familiar with this page, and if you click here, you'll see the questions that the Super Tues have decided on the due dates. You'll notice also that there's 2 weeks are going to be due during the lecture break, so I'll expect you then to email them to me. Oh, sorry, I've got to refresh it. I think it's there. That's the right one? Is that the right one? That's my understanding of what we decided with Super Tube. What are the keys? Cool, I read it off there. Yeah. Okay, well, you won't get penalised if you do last year, because but that's the one that Super Tube decided. One other thing on here, if you, the graduates gave all their presentations on Tuesday night, and they're all up there if you want to look at them. So a very interesting evening of 10 presentations relating to environmental policy and planning in their particular countries, or in this case, in terms of the Landcare Basin, which is a really interesting example of a jurisdiction in Australia which has some really interesting similarities but contrasts with the Murray-Darling Basin. So, any questions about the assessment? So Landcare policy is a really good case example of environmental policy and planning in Australia, so hence that being one of our first detailed case studies. Most of you who have done stress courses will know a lot about land degradation in Australia already, so I'm not going to go into that much detail. But if you're an international student and don't know much about that, there'll be some course resources being developed in the SRES3028 course, and I'll show you later how to get to those. So all the lectures in 1001 are being videoed this year, so you can watch them if you want to catch up. And there was a particularly interesting lecture by Andrew Campbell the other week, who was in charge of land and water research in Australia for many years, talking about issues there that you might be interested in. I just want to say something briefly about technical fixes, which relates quite well to what we've been talking about today in terms of the role of government. So, is the role of government to engineer solutions. So Australia has a long history of large soil conservation departments with large fleets of tractors trying to have technical solutions to land degradation. Do you try to change people's behaviour through economic measures or through regulation or through incentives or by individual action? I'll say a brief bit about what Landcare is, and it's a community-based environmental land stewardship organisation where individual farmers work together to manage their local resources. I'll say something about the history of Landcare, what Landcare has achieved, some emerging landscape dilemmas, and I'd like to finish at this time by talking about the characteristics of a learning society. So there's increasing awareness around the world in terms of communities of practice, of the need to have organisations which can be effective in terms of learning and to incorporate new information into how they run things. And obviously that's pertinent to any kind of ongoing environmental management, environmental policy regimes. So there's several reasons why Landcare is early on in this course. It's a very good case example of community participation. So we've all had a tutorial now about public participation. People talk about public participation being good, but it's much more complex than that, as I hope you realise now. Public participation can be done for the wrong reasons, can be done badly. Landcare is a case example that's being held up around the world of how to manage the commons. So the idea of how to avoid the tragedy of the commons through community action. And at various international conferences, when Australia's been asked to report on its progress towards Agenda 21 and so forth, Landcare is the thing that our spokespeople often bring out as something that Australia's contributed in this area. And you can see that a number of other countries in the world are trying the Landcare model. A graduate of this class spoke to us 2 years ago, and she's working in the Philippines now, and there's Philippines Landcare model very closely along the Australian model in terms of trying to get people involved in community-based action. Landcare also, as I'll say, has spawned a whole array of land stewardship and monitoring groups such as Water Watch, Frog Watch, and these other things where there's community monitoring of resources. And again, other countries are looking to Australia and how that works. So I remember being quite struck sitting in Hanoi talking to the head of the Vietnam's head of the Mekong Basin Commission, and who said that what we're going to do in Vietnam is copy the Water Watch model where kids in rural areas of Australia in particular have been monitoring water quality, and it's been a very effective way to get changes in their parents' behaviour in terms of if there's lots of pollutants coming down one creek that happens to be off that farm, with kids in the local school are telling their parents that the problem in these old areas come from our farm. Often that's a way to put pressure on their parents to change their behaviour. And finally, in terms of why I look at Landcare, it's a good example of the trends in Australia towards regional planning. And one of the last tutorials we're going to have in this class is on regional planning, and there's been very major moves in Australia towards planning at a regional level, Landcare has been a key factor in that process. So Landcare has been effectively scaled up from working on individual properties to regional approaches. And a lot of the pushes towards regional planning, which we'll focus in on later lectures and tutorials, the impetus for that was from Landcare. Another good reason to look at Landcare now is it's quite a crucial time. So those of you who went to the super tutorial would have heard there's a new government policy, which I'll say something about in a minute. It's also a crucial time because a lot of Landcare groups, as this slide shows, have done a lot of farm planning. They've identified what needs to be done in terms of catchment planning. They're trying to do things at a regional level. But there's growing frustration among people involved in Landcares who say they've identified what needs to be done,